Today's class is going to be, or today's episode is going to be about still lifes. Now I know if you are an artist, that word is kind of like, no, don't make me do it. But I'm here to give you some tips and tricks to make it a little bit more fun and kind of pull you away from that art school exercise. So to start out, I'm going to be working in oil paints today, so I have a starter mixing set from Tuscan Pine already put out on my palette. And the first thing I want to mention when you're doing a still life, you might be able to see him right now behind me, is to pick things that you are actually interested in or attached to, because if you are used to still lives in an art school setting, it's usually things that the professor has picked out, or things that you might have picked out in a hurry, or you're just not really drawn to the subject matter. So today I've kind of chosen something a little bit more unique. So I have a little golden dinosaur scene set up here, and he or she, if you guys have any name suggestions, please let me know. They're having a very intense conversation over the phone right now, so I really wanted to capture that. And the tip I have in terms of selecting what you are painting is think of a scene or a story. Don't just pick objects. Think of something that you want to say or something that you really want to see, and use that to create your still life. So think about it a little bit more as, like, think of the idea of what you want to see before you pick out your images, or your objects, I mean. So that is the first thing. So I wanted to tell that story of just something kind of surreal but relatable. So you can thank Emmy, who has provided a couple of these objects today. Apparently this guy lives in Emmy's living room along with the majority of these other things here. And then I also have my own little edition of another golden dinosaur down here. So that's the first start, is to put something together that's more unique to you, that tells a story, something that you're excited about. Now, from there, the next step of advice that I have is don't start with a plain white canvas. Just go ahead and jump in and add something to your canvas. It can be a tone, it can just be a brush stroke. Start with something that's already on the canvas. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. So again, I have this Tuscan Pine mixing starter set here. It has, I believe it's more of a CMYK with some white. And since I'm working with mostly two different colors, black and gold, I kind of want something more interesting in the background. So I'm going to go for maybe something like a peachy color. So I'm going to go ahead and mix something, thin it down, and tone my canvas. I think I like that color. Alright. And another thing that I'm going to suggest, especially with something like this, if you are doing something that has a lot of the same colors, and you're working with a mixing set, go ahead and mix whatever color you're using the most on your palette so that you have a nice pile to pull from as you're working. So now that I have this background color, just while I'm mixing colors, I'm going to mix a nice amount of gold. And I forget that reds are pretty strong in comparison to my yellows, so I'll grab quite a bit more yellow there. A little bit more yellow, maybe some white. And then I'll just have this ready to go on my palette, since I am going to be pulling a lot of this color. And another thing with still lives, I know the whole exercise in like art schools are paint what you see. It's an exercise to learn how to paint from life. if you're not in art school anymore, you don't have to follow those same rules. You can change up the colors. You can use it more as a reference. So you can move things around if you want. You can just use this to create your subject matter and then do something else with the background. You can really change things up now that you maybe not be in school anymore. You can do whatever you want with it. You can use this as your everyday practice if you want and bring it more to something more personal to you. So this is not the perfect gold I was going for, but I think this is a good start to have. All right, let's get something on the canvas. Just gonna grab some solvent to thin down this nice peachy color I have. And if you're looking at this and you see that I have some pencil marks on here, I did very lightly mark down where I wanted my painting to be framed. Because that's another thing, is you want to play around with how you see what you've put together. So you could paint the entire scene. You could have this scene just be a part of your entire image, and then maybe you need to make another still life for the rest of your painting. But play around with the perspective, move things around. You don't have to go with what you first see. So what I decided on once I've created this lovely scene is I didn't want the entire thing in this particular painting. Maybe I paint this again and I do paint the entire scene. But for this one, especially with our time limit, of course, I kind of zoomed in on the most interesting part. And for me, that was our lovely dinosaur holding the phone. So I'm focusing on that, and I just used a pencil to really quickly mark the edges of the scene that I've selected from this. So I'm kind of working with zooming in on the dinosaur's face holding the phone. It cuts off right where their tail leaves the canvas, so it cuts off right there, and then you see the entirety of one foot but not the other. So I'm zooming in a little bit. There we go. Now I got a nice color to work on top of. And I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. Now, when it comes to painting from life, my favorite thing to do is lay down the most obvious objects and shadows and go from very loose to very detailed. So I'm going to start by placing down the big shapes and the angles that I see, and then slowly refine and refine as I go. And I also like to start with big brushes so I can, again, start loose, and then as I refine, I'll move down to my smaller brushes. So right now I'm working with the Hamburg Premier. This is a size 20 filbert. And I'm going to create a little bit more of a yellowy gold. As my starter here. And actually, you know what? Let's make this just a touch more dramatic. I have this little remote here. There we go. A little bit more drama. Got a light on there. And I'm going to start blocking out what I see. So I know I want my head to be right around here. And I'm just going to start laying down shapes. I'm not going to do the other side because that's darker, but I can kind of mark it. I'm just planning everything right now. I can always adjust as I go. There's her head, or his. What are we saying so far about who this dinosaur is? What is their name? Is it a he, she, they? Who are they? I need you guys to tell me. some spikies going on. And another thing is you don't have to paint this exactly as you see it. Maybe I want this to appear more like a realistic dinosaur and less of a toy dinosaur. So some of the things that I would do to adjust that is, for example, looking inside the mouth, I can see the plastic kind of armature that holds the jaw together. Maybe I ignore that. Maybe I make that part up. Maybe I just black out the inside of the mouth. So I can really adjust this to what I really want out of it. Even though these exercises are meant to be, how do you paint this exactly, make it look realistic, exactly what you see from life. That was an exercise, but this style of painting is still used all of the time. So tweak it to your own personal practice. All right, now I know this isn't gold, but I'm gonna mark it in with the same color. This is the phone. I think it's a little bit closer to her. Little hands. Oh my gosh, the hands are so cute. This kind of comes down here. Any name ideas yet? Get the bottom of this phone in here. It's a little bit different down on the bottom. Oh, and then her hand actually touches the phone handle, so I'm going to adjust that just a touch. And I can actually go in here, my paper towel, and since this is still the beginning stages, I can erase that if I need to. Alright. So I'm just paying attention to both the subject matter and the negative space. So how are things touching, what's happening in between these two things. So that's how I found out that this little space here is tinier than I first made. And actually, of course, T-Rex arms are a lot shorter than that. So let's just shorten that a bit. And then right behind here, this is where that cord is starting to wrap around their body. So I'm just gonna dab that in, kind of goes right up next to their arm there, and then goes right off the edge of my canvas here. That's where I have everything kind of framed. It's very zoomed in. This is the main subject that I'm focusing on. Already see them coming together, which actually this is coming a lot closer. Let's adjust that just a touch. Go back in and erase this. And then this is where their back spikies come into play. Body kind of comes down like this. Got really nice thigh right here. And you can kind of see all these shapes that I'm making. I'm leaving just a little bit of that background in between each shape so I know how they're divided a little bit. Oh, it looks so fluorescent on the camera. That will help me as I refine things and move things around. I can actually physically see things even though I'm using the same color as I go. So I got a nice calf right here. Goes into that thigh. And then they've got some bangles going on right here. And then got an entire foot on display back here. So let's see if I can get that in super quick. There we go. And then their tail goes off the edge here. Alright, and then the only other thing that I have within this frame that I've created is I just see the top part of that phone sticking up from the bottom here. That fun little holder shape. Alright, so this is now basically my sketch. I've put everything in there that I want to focus on. I figured out how I'm framing this. I know where everything is laying, but now everything's the same color. So this is basically my underdrawing. I know where things are though. So this is where I'm going to start picking out purposeful colors. So I'm going to start looking at this, finding those highlights and shadows, play around with color a little bit. And I might actually switch to a smaller brush at this point. Not too much smaller. I got a size 12 filbert. But I'm going to start laying down highlights because I really like that dramatic lighting going on, and I want to make sure I figure out where those are before I go too much further. I know usually I think with oil paint you go from dark to light, but I like to mix things up a little bit. I like to figure out where things are, especially those highlights. I get a little antsy. But okay. Now this is where I'm going to start looking at my still life and squinting my eyes. And wherever I see a really bright highlight, I'm going to start marking where that is. And then again, I'm also trying to pull away from it being a toy and more realistic. So I'm going to also keep in mind the seams of things and how that is affecting it, making it look like a toy. I'm going to adjust that as I go. So maybe this line isn't so stark. Maybe it blends into the thigh a little bit. This is pretty light here, and this is all in shadow down here. Might actually erase just a little bit of that. Have a nice line of scales up here. This is a little bright, but not too much, so I'm just going to very lightly blend that into that color. Again, squinting my eyes. They have a shadow right here on the tail, and the thing that's creating that shadow isn't in my frame, so I get to decide whether I want to keep that shadow or ignore it. And I think I'm going to ignore it. And for that, I'm just going to paint what I see outside of that shadow and continue it all the way through to the other side. I really like this thigh here because you can see those muscles. And try and capture that in here. Gets a little bit darker on the other side there. You can always wait to add the shadows to fix that. There we go. And if you are really drawn to this still life already, I do believe we have the photo either, if not with our moderators, Amanda and Jillian. I will post that later to our Jerry's Live Facebook page.
Already posted?
Already posted, thank you. You can use that for yourselves. I provided the entire scene, so if you want to do the entire scene or zoom in, totally up to you. And those bangles, gotta get those bangles in there. Okay. Alright. And the cord is right here. But this highlight continues through to the other side, but there's not a lot there. I'm going to make sure I get that in there though. Maybe I'll add those little notches of the coil. Oh, and down here, the foot. I forgot about the foot back here. This is really highlighted down on the bottom. And something about painting things that are metallic, the highlights and shadows are very contrasty and very close together. So that's something important if you're painting something like this. It is nice nails. And then a really nice highlight on the ball of this phone. Maybe I'll give this dinosaur some really cool manicured nails. I feel like they need it. Just a touch of highlight on the side of this phone, and that highlight disappears behind their arm and comes back down here. And I think after I lay down these highlights, before I get into the shadows, I want to block in the background. I think that's going to help me focus in on the edges of my dinosaur. So I'll get that in. Some cool highlights going on down here. There we go. I'm starting to see it come together slowly. Let us know in the chat if you have tried still life before and immediately were like, nope, never want to do this again. Because I feel like that's a common experience when it comes to artists and still lives. But I'm hoping this gives you some inspiration to maybe try it again. Oh, I like the little snoot shadow. Got their eye there. Maybe I'll refine the shape of the jaw. And the edge of the tongue is very highlighted, which I kind of love. Okay. This is mostly in shadow, a little bit of highlights on the neck here, some reflected light here, which I can adjust the color later. Alright. Oh, forgot about the rest of the phone down here. Alright. Okay, I think I have most of what I need blocked in for those highlights. I'm going to go ahead and block in the background. That might help me a little bit more with my refinement. Now, my background is black. That does make things a little bit easier. However, I do not have to go black. And to make the gold pop, since I'm leaning a little bit more orange, I might make it like a dark blue, more indigo. Again, to make it more fun, you can play around with color a little bit. So the cyan's already pretty dark. I just mixed a little bit of black in there. And now I'm going to refine my object a little bit more by creating an outline. Again, I'm just squinting as I go. And another thing is, this is all going to be about like breaking the rules that you were taught to follow. You don't have to paint the entire background from edge to edge. If you really like how it looks, where it's kind of blurry at the edges, it doesn't go all the way to the end, lean into it. I don't know who the artist was, but there's someone out there that said, if an artist says that it's done, the art is done. The art is done when the artist says it's done. Something like that. I feel like their mouth is open a lot more. There we go. Also going to try and paint around where I know there's going to be some teeth. You also don't have to do the same color for the background the entire time. You can create a little bit of a gradient if you want. Again, there are no rules. Allow yourself to kind of decide whatever it is that you want to do and do it. If you decide you don't like it, you can try again, try something different. Alright. So the coils kind of start here. To make a little bit more of that color. Follow up the back here. There's not a lot of spikies here. They start to show up right around here. Try and capture those a little bit. Do we have any questions or name suggestions in the chat yet? You know I love your questions.
We have a few names.
Oh, what we got?
Miranda.
Miranda.
Ernestine.
Ernestine, okay.
Yep. Dina the Dino.
Oh.
And Sherbert.
Sherbert. I kind of like Sherbert. Yeah, I think that's their name. I think this is Sherbert. Oh, I forgot. They have another hand. Should probably put that in there, huh? Okay. It's just like right there. There we go. Boop. A little bit of a space between her other hand. I guess that's the other question. Is Sherbert a girl? Or is this the boy? Boy Sherbert? I just really need to know who Sherbert is. Who are you? This is the cord here. I'm just going to do a straight line and then add those little divots. Guys, I'm so excited. She's coming together already. I really like this negative space shape in here. Up against her chest. And then that shape of the phone. I'm trying to be very careful because I have a bigger brush, which is what I want. I don't want to noodle. But it is a smaller space. And yeah, here we go. Something I noticed when it comes to painting at an easel, I was watching Emmy paint the other day. She had her arm behind her back as she was painting. I feel like I do that too. Does anyone else just kind of get their other hand out of the way as they're painting? Emmy had like a cool trick where she hooked her finger into her belt loop so it was like locked in place. Alright. I think that part's looking good. Go ahead and focus on this little phone piece. What is the proper name for that part of the phone? The receiver? The seat? This little guy here.
Hold please.
It's been a long time since I've had one. When it's a cordless one, it's the dock, but I don't know if that's what that is here.
fun shape too. Kind of holding my brush too close. I need to hold it further down the handle so I'm not getting too detailed here.
Turns out it's the switch hook.
The switch hook. It's a fancy name.
Or the plunger. Either
The
one.
plunger. Okay. I like the plunger.
Ooh. They also said the cradle, which makes
Oh, okay.
more sense, yes.
I would rather call it a cradle.
Yeah.
than a plunger.
I'm doing it again. I keep grabbing my handle like way up here. Definitely recommend holding it back here, especially as you're kind of sketching and laying things down. It helps you to loosen up just a smidgen. And I do like those soft edges that don't quite touch the edge. I don't do that very often, but I do like the look of it. Get the other side here. I'm gonna try and go over here. Can you guys still see what I'm doing if I move over here? I need a new angle. Just for a second. Here we go. Okay. Now, I'm the type of person that can get bored by doing the same thing for too long. So I'm going to take a step back from the background and try and work on something else. Because sometimes I'll get stuck on something, I'll get bored with it, and then I'll give up on the painting. Something you can do is literally to just stop what you're doing and focus on something else. So I'm going to stop with the background for just a little bit. I'm going to work on her shadows. Clean off my brush a little bit. I do like the idea of having a little bit of blue in my shadows, but not a ton. I think I want to lean more towards like a neutral purple for the shadows on her. So maybe I'll clean it off a little bit. Grab some of that magenta and just mix whatever's left in my brush into that. So I have a nice warm purple. Maybe I'll add a little bit more yellow to tone it down a little bit more blue. I think that's a good color. I didn't mix a lot of it, so I need to keep in mind what I've chosen. I'm going to do the same thing I did with those highlights and just figure out where things are. Like I said, she's got a really wide jaw. She's telling her girlfriends about the crazy thing that happened at the cafe earlier. She's got her whole tongue kind of in shadow on the top here. A couple shadows where the teeth are. I'm not quite at that point of adding in teeth. I can add just a little bit of suggestion. Here we go. And I've been wanting to get this part where the top of her head kind of comes flat and hides behind these spikes along her eyebrow. This is a really nice shadow on top of her head. Kind of goes all the way to the other side there. And then continues down on her snoot. Some really kind of lighter shadows right here. So I'm just very lightly brushing this color into that gold color I created. And then this part's really dark. This is right where the phone is casting a shadow onto her face. It kind of gets a little dark down here. Again, I'm just still squinting at what I'm looking at. Gets a little bit dark behind her eyebrow. And I want to get the eye in there, but I know I don't have a small enough brush for that quite yet. And it's very tiny. Maybe I'll just suggest it right there. I think it's there. She looks a little silly without her teeth. Maybe I need to add her teeth next. Alright. Here's her jaw. This is kind of entirely in shadow there. Oh, she's got some really nice neck veins going on. I might just swipe those in. Get the bottom of her jaw. There she is. She's coming together now that I put that jaw in there. Get the dark side of her chest. I'm picking up a little bit of the blue from the background. I'm not too worried about it. Again, I'm going from loose to refined, so right now I'm still in the very loose stage. I can always go back in and refine things that I might have brushed over as I went. It is kind of darker over on this side, so maybe I'm not upset that that blue got in there. She's got her arm way back here. Alright, now this is the phone. I want to make sure I get that nice oval shadow so I can start seeing where that phone is. It's a nice shadow line right under that highlight line. And again, those shadows and highlights when it comes to metallic things, very contrasty and very close together. So there's not a lot of an in-between between those really dark darks and those really light lights. They're kind of butted up right next to each other without much blending. I just really find those metallic highlights and shadows very pleasing. Now this highlight and shadow area on the ball part of this phone is kind of crazy. I'm going to try and not focus on how detailed it is. I'm just going to squint and figure out the main shapes. I think that's pretty close. Now this handle is almost entirely shadowed. There is a nice shadow right next to it, so maybe I'll differentiate that later with a different color. I'm really enjoying how this is coming together. I'm having a little bit more fun than I thought I would. And I do think I made the top part of the phone a little bit smaller than the bottom part. So I either need to scale up this or shrink down this. I'm trying to see what seems the most accurate, and I think this part needs to be a little bit bigger because this seems like it's the right size. So I need to go back and grab a lighter color to continue the top of this part of the phone. And that feels a little bit better. Alright. Now if I did give her a really nice manicure, what color would her nails be?
Bright red.
Bright
I'm
red?
thinking hot pink.
Ooh, hot
Ooh,
pink.
I like hot pink. Her name is Sherbert. Okay, I think I need to make just a little bit more of this color here. It's mostly that magenta, a little bit of cyan, just a touch of that yellow. There we go. Alright, now that I have this fresh color, I'm going to try and find those darker areas, and I'll touch those first. This is pretty dark here, and here. Again, I'm just squinting my eyes wherever I see the darkest dark. I'm just going in with a single brush stroke. That's pretty dark there. I really like the curve of the scales on her nose. It's a little bit darker on the side. And maybe I can touch in the nostril that's right here. Here we go. Alright, and I need to differentiate the phone and the neck here, so maybe I'll shadow this a little bit more. Get those shadows in the only word that's coming to mind is plunger. What was the other one?
Cradle.
Cradle. Get the cradle. There we go. Okay, now time to tackle the back half. I'm already starting to want to switch again. I'm going to try and get as much as I can done on the other half of her. This is a little bit softer shadow over here. And this is really bright. There's not a lot of shadow except for texture. So maybe I'll just lightly add in some texture, blend it in. Now there is a seam in the connection between like her back and her thigh, and that leans towards it looking like a toy. So instead of having a really sharp, stark shadow, maybe I'll have it more of a blend, so it's more of a smooth transition instead of a seam. this muscle in here. She works out. And this is really dark down here. So let me get some fresh paint and create.
Michaela,
Yes.
Penny on Facebook was wondering if you prefer filberts over flats in this situation.
I typically lean towards flats. I believe the brushes I selected are from the Explorer set, so it has a nice range of different shapes and sizes. And I like to play around with different things. So if I'm used to flats and I'm trying to change things up a little bit, using a different shape can help me find out different things. But yeah, I typically lean towards flats for this because it's, I don't know, I feel like I just like the sharp square edges. But since this is a little bit more organic shaped, I think the filbert does lean towards creating more of a like lifelike appearance.
Thank you.
Yeah. Alright, her knee is pretty dark. Alright, I might switch back to the background. Getting a little caught up into the shadows. Really like jumping around. Let me just get this final piece in here, I guess. And the top of her tail, it's a little bit in shadow. And then there's a little bit of shadow here. Okay. I think that's good for shadows. Let's jump back to cutting out the shape of the outline. I'm definitely not an Emmy painter. My hands are very orange. Just gonna wipe it off on my Tuscan pine apron. Alright. Back to cutting out the shape of her outline. Get those nice spikes on her back. Now, even if you are trying to make it look realistic with the colors that you're choosing, even if you start like this and you get kind of crazy with your color selections, you can still refine it to the point of it looking realistic, and it will have these really nice rich colors peeking through. And I really think that adds to the realism. And this is pretty smooth here, no spikes on this part. Alright, and it looks like we're already getting close to the end. Are there any final questions? And if you would like to see the finished product, because I do think I'm going to finish this, let me know in the comments and I will be sure to post it to our Jerry's Live Facebook group. If you are not a part of that yet, don't forget there's that one security code. And if you guys try it out, please share what you've created, or if you've done a still life recently, share that on that Facebook page. We always love to see that. Ooh, I'm trying to get as much as I can done. Were there any final questions?
I haven't got any questions, but we would love to see it finished.
Yay, okay. I'm definitely enjoying this, so it will definitely be finished. Alright, I think I'm gonna have to stop for the day. Thank you guys so much for joining me. If you enjoyed, let me know. And if you would like to see some fun products next week, we have some Pantone markers. Emmy and Ophelia will be here playing with those, and they have so much fun stuff. So definitely come join us next week. Again, that class code is going to be JL391 if you're curious about anything that I was using tonight. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye.